Every year, hundreds of people try to cross a 60-mile stretch of jungle that quite literally devours humans. It's the only place on the planet where the road just ends in the middle of nowhere. The Pan American Highway is the largest road system ever built by humans. It stretches a whopping 18,600 miles, from the northernmost point of Alaska all the way down to the south of Argentina. The highway connects countries with completely different landscapes and crosses some of the most challenging terrain on Earth. But it isn't continuous because of a 60-mile gap between Panama and Colombia, the Darien Gap. On satellite images, it looks like a green patch, but on the ground, it's a solid wall of jungle, with every foot fiercely guarded by nature itself. Building a road through it's been a dream for decades. You could drive across both Americas without ever boarding a ferry. And yet, this is real footage from that place. Human remains, primeval jungle. You're looking at the most inhospitable and dangerous place on Earth. And it's not just about the jungle. If a road ever appears in the Darien Gap, everything will change. The environment, migration routes, even the maps. Because this place isn't just a hole in the highway, it's the one spot on the planet where Earth itself seems to say, "You shall not pass." Access denied. Attempts to carve the Pan American Highway through the Darien began back in the 1930s. At the time, the idea sounded almost romantic, to connect north and south with a single road so that one could drive from Alaska to Patagonia without ever changing vehicles. But the very first expeditions turned into nightmares. Machinery sank. People vanished. Later, they returned to the plan more than once, in the 1950s, the 1980s, the 1990s, even in the early 2000s. They redrew maps, created committees, and filed reports. Yet, strangely enough, all that remains of these grand ambitions are traces of bulldozers and a dotted line on the map. So what exactly is the Darien Gap? It's not just a stretch of jungle between Panama and Colombia. It's a place where nature said, no entry. There's no straight horizon here. The land suddenly caves in, drops away under your feet, turns into a swamp. A thick green carpet of vines and giant trees hide pits, roots, and water. Every step could be your last. The trail just ends, and the ground disappears beneath you. To the east, closer to the Caribbean, lie swampy plains where even on sunny days the soil gurgles underfoot. One wrong step and you might sink knee-deep in clay, or worse. Locals move only along narrow trails or by canoe. There's no other way. The closer you get to the center of the gap, the drier and higher the land becomes. Hills gradually rise into the Serrania del Darien Mountains. They're not tall, about 3,300 feet, but they feel impassable because of the dense forest, where under the canopy reigns a half-light and constant dampness. The climate here is a classic tropical, hot, humid, and stifling all year round. Average temperatures hover between 77 and 86, barely dropping even at night. The rainy season lasts roughly from April to December, when clouds seem to seize the sky. Downpours strike several times a day, short but fierce, with thunder. The soil turns into a muddy bath, and getting through it's an adventure of the least pleasant kind. Streams become rivers, and rivers turn into filthy torrents, sweeping away everything in their path. The dry season is really just a figure of speech. Sure, there's a bit more sun, but the humidity never leaves. And even then, evening showers are common. There's no real break from water here. It's everywhere, in the air, in the soil, in your clothes, even in your breath. Sounds like a builder's nightmare? Absolutely. You can't lay proper asphalt here. Any construction work turns into pure torment, with tons of sweat and endless exhaustion. But there's something else that keeps any truck or construction crew from coming here, and that's far scarier than the mud. You're not welcome here. So the builder starts laying a road through the Darien Gap, and then he feels a pain that could easily be compared to a gunshot wound. It was caused by a bullet, but not the kind that flies out of a weapon. This one is the bullet ant. The local Embera people know everything about it. They even use these insects in initiation rituals. The boys put on gloves filled with ants and endure the pain until it drives them mad. They say if you can stand it, you become a warrior. For the locals, it's a test. For outsiders, a deadly mistake. But road builders are hardly recruited from local warrior tribes, so one careless move in the Darien Gap can mean insane pain, the kind that won't let you walk or even think. And yes, it lasts for 24 hours. Just something to think about when imagining what it takes to survive out here. Besides, the Darien Gap is the kingdom of snakes. There are more of them here than there are paths. Death itself lives under the vines. The fer-de-lance hides in the leaves and bites without warning, and that's a death sentence if you don't get the antidote in time. The bushmaster, the largest venomous snake in the Americas, up to 10 feet long, moves as silently as a shadow. It stays still until you step on it. One bite and your blood stops clotting. There's also the coral snake, small but lethal. Its bright rings are a warning that many never have the time to notice. And you know who best knows who's the most dangerous around here? The locals. You don't even have to ask. Just look at what they carefully smear on the tips of their arrows. It's the toxic secretion of a small creature, the golden poison frog, said to be the most poisonous vertebrate on Earth. They can jump unexpectedly, and once their deadly toxin touches human skin, the heart of the uninvited guest simply stops. One tiny drop is enough to kill a person, and a single frog carries enough poison to wipe out dozens. Jaguars also roam these jungles. Spotting one in Darien is almost a miracle. Though the feeling of being watched never leaves you, they move silently, observe for hours. When they decide you don't belong here, they step out of the shadows. They're strong enough to kill a bull with one bite, so a human really has no business in these jungles. Pumas are rarer, but they act the same, fast, precise, without warning. The water isn't any safer than the land. In the murky swamps live caimans and black caimans. They surface without a sound, and you only see them when it's already too late. Beneath them lurk electric eels. One jolt and your body's paralyzed. Then the water takes care of the rest. All this is enough reason for builders not to go into the Darien Gap in ordinary clothes. They need full armor and weapons. But even that's not the end of it. The most dangerous creatures here aren't jaguars or snakes. They're mosquitoes. These tiny bloodsuckers carry malaria, dengue, and chikungunya fever. The bites are almost invisible. But after a couple of days, the fever, headache, and weakness begin, and without treatment, you won't get up again. During the day, they're few, but by evening, the air literally hums with their whining buzz. You'd think it can't get worse, but in fact, humans can pave asphalt even in places full of mud, chaos, and creatures that seem straight out of nightmares. Construction is possible. Let's move to the Malaysian port of Borneo Island. It's the tropics with the same humidity, heat, and heavy rainfall. The wildlife here isn't exactly friendly. Snakes, insects, mammals, many of them are quite capable of killing a human. Yet, even in such conditions, construction of the Pan-Borneo Highway is in full swing, already stretching for more than 1,200 miles. Where a regular embankment would sink, the road is placed on piles, long concrete supports that go deep into solid soil layers. In some places, they build elevated sections. The road runs above the swamp, doesn't press down on the soft ground, and doesn't sink after every downpour. In other sections, they use cushions made of lightweight materials, foam blocks, geogrids, sand-gravel mixes. These distribute the vehicle's weight and prevent the road from sagging. Swamps are drained with pipes and ditches so water doesn't stagnate under the roadbed. It rains there almost every day, just like in Darien. But the drainage system keeps the highway from turning into a river. Engineers work by the principle, don't break it, go around it. Where digging is impossible, they build a bridge. Where the ground breathes, they reinforce it with geotextile. The result is a proper asphalt highway with trucks and buses driving along where once only boats could pass. Too far from the Darien Gap? Well, then let's take a look at Brazil. There they built Highway BR-319, which runs through the very heart of the Amazon, a place where it rains 9 months a year, with countless small rivers and swamps stretching for dozens of miles. When the road was built back in the 1970s, engineers didn't invent anything fancy. They made gravel embankments, installed drainage pipes so the road wouldn't wash away. Bridges were built on piles, supports driven into firm ground, topped with reinforced concrete spans. In the most unstable spots, they built flyovers, elevated crossings that didn't disturb the soft soil. Construction proceeded in stages. First, small bridge sections were assembled right on site, then connected into long spans so machinery could pass without delay. Some parts were even built using wooden decks, temporary platforms for equipment during the works. Sure, nowadays you can't really drive through the whole thing. Near the cities, the surface is okay, but remote stretches are a total nightmare. In some spots, there's no asphalt at all, just mud so deep that even off-road vehicles struggle to pass. But that's all because at some point, BR-319 simply stopped getting proper maintenance. The tropics don't forgive neglect. If you don't clear the ditches and patch the asphalt, the jungle quickly takes over. Yet the very fact that BR-319 lasted this long proves even in the Amazon, with its swamps, downpours, and near 100% humidity, building a road is impossible. So from an engineering point of view, the Darien Gap is a problem that can be solved. And here's where a much bigger issue appears. No one actually wants the Pan American Highway to lose its gap. Panama will suffer. Panama is a country many see as far more stable and prosperous than most South American nations, including Colombia. For Panama, the Darien Gap is a wall of brutally inhospitable jungle, a natural shield against migration collapse. Though not a perfect one, people still keep coming. In 2024 alone, 174 deaths were recorded, the highest number ever on this route. The Panamanian authorities found the bodies of 55 people, but even they admit that's far from all. Hundreds remain missing in the jungle. Sometimes groups get lost. Some drown in rivers, others die from illness or snake bites, yet even such a death toll doesn't stop anyone. In 2021, around 133,000 people crossed the Darien Gap heading toward Panama. In 2022, almost 250,000. By 2023, more than 500,000. There were 520,085 crossings. People keep coming because for many, this is the last trail north, a path to hope, even if it leads through hell. If a highway were built, everything would change overnight. Right now, the wild trail holds back the flow with its cruelty. Not everyone dares to walk for weeks through mud and water, but a road would turn that path into an open highway. Where it now takes 10 to 15 days on foot, a car could pass in just a few hours. What now frightens people would become a route for buses, trucks, and vans full of migrants. The flow wouldn't just increase, it would explode. If 500,000 people a year make it through the Darien without a road, with asphalt, it could easily become 1 million or more. Sure, a paved road would drastically reduce the number of deaths. It'd be a much safer route, which sounds positive, but only at first glance, because Panama's border simply wouldn't cope. Even now, the camps on the northern side are full, doctors and soldiers are overwhelmed, and locals complain about food and water shortages. A highway would turn the migration into a constant stream. People would come in families and columns with children in their arms, not fearing the jungle because there'd be no jungle anymore. Asphalt would take away fear, but bring chaos. And that's not the only problem. Not everyone crossing the Darien is fleeing poverty. Among the refugees are plenty with past they don't talk about. In the jungle, no one checks documents. Everyone is just a traveler. Panamanian soldiers have already detained people linked to South American gangs. Some are members of Tren de Aragua, a Venezuelan group notorious for robbery, extortion, and murder. There have even been cases where armed migrants attacked others in the Darien for food, money, or phones. After the highway's built, there will be more of such people. The road will open the way not only to the desperate, but also to those looking for a place to hide or start over without leaving a trace. For Panama, that means a new wave of crime. Once the highway appears, families with children will mix with smugglers, fugitives, and human traffickers. The police, who already struggle to manage, will be overwhelmed, and that raises the risk of more criminal elements slipping into the country. Does Panama even want that? The answer seems obvious, which is why fewer and fewer people in the country are thinking about the highway through the Darien Gap, and even then only in a negative light. Some even go so far as to say that such a highway would be a possible military defeat waiting to happen. Military threat. For most of the 19th century, Panama was a province of Colombia, and in the early 20th century it gained independence, with the Darien Gap playing the key role in that story. Because of it, the government in Bogotá could barely control the region. It simply couldn't reach it through all those impassable jungles, rivers, and dangerous animals. In 1903, when the United States supported Panama's separation, Colombia couldn't send troops overland, and at sea an American fleet blocked their way. So within just a few days, Panama became an independent country. In this story, Darien turned out to be more than just a swamp, it was a strategic factor. Without it, the Panamanian Revolution might have been crushed under Colombian boots. Now Panama lives with the understanding that this barrier isn't a coincidence, but a strategic guarantee. Colombia is bigger, more populous, with an army of tens of thousands. Panama, on the other hand, is small and narrow, relying on its canal and geography. That's why the idea of building a highway through Darien isn't just an engineering issue, it breaks their natural defense. If there's asphalt, there's also a direct road, one that, in case of a conflict, could be crossed not in weeks through jungles, but in just a few hours by a convoy of vehicles. Military analysts and former Panamanian officers have mentioned more than once in the press that the country fears getting a ready-made corridor in the south. The road would create a direct link between the two countries that was physically impossible before. Right now, any movement takes weeks on foot and requires military patrol support. But once the road is built, a convoy could reach the Pan American Highway from the Colombian border in just a few hours. Panamanian analysts openly say that such a highway would become a strategic corridor not only for trade, but also for potential military movement. In case of a conflict, Panama would no longer be able to hide behind its swamps. It simply wouldn't have time to react. Still, it's quite likely that the U.S. would back Panama up, and that it would certainly mean more American military presence in the country, since Panama holds key importance for them. Panama Canal. The Panama Canal is a gold mine. Without it, global trade would grind to a halt. The narrow strip of water between the Pacific and Atlantic's like a valve through which global economy breathes. Every day, dozens of ships pass through. Tankers, container ships, vessels loaded with grain and machinery. 5% of all world cargo moves through these gates. For the U.S., it's not just a canal, it's a strategic organ. Not only money flows through it, but also energy, supplies, and military cargo. It's the quiet engine of the American economy and navy. The canal was built by the Americans for themselves. After Panama's separation from Colombia, the U.S. directly controlled it for nearly a century, surrounding it with military bases and making sure no outsider came close. When the canal was handed over to Panama in 1999, Washington formally stepped back, but in reality stayed nearby. Engineers, consultants, security advisors. Panama has no army, and if anything happens, American planes and ships will appear in an instant. Now imagine this, a highway built through the Darien Gap. Panama would stop being a quiet island between two oceans. From Colombia, there'd be a straight road. Not a muddy jungle path, but real asphalt. For Panama, that's a question of survival. For the U.S., a threat to its most important asset outside its own borders. The Panama Canal only works as long as the country around it is stable. It doesn't tolerate noisy borders, crowds, or weapons. Everything must stay calm, like in an operating room. If Panama turns into a transit zone flooded with migrants, cargo, and contraband, the whole balance will collapse. Ship owners will face delays, insurance rates will go up, and the U.S. will lose confidence that its vessels can pass safely. For Washington, Panama isn't just a partner, it's a kind of vault of strategic stability. Americans are used to this patch of the world being reliable and predictable, and if anything goes wrong, they can step in. But once that road appears, everything changes. A new land artery will emerge, one impossible to control the same way as the canal. People and goods will move by land, bypassing ports and customs, and then the canal's security will be at risk. Panama is too small to face such a challenge alone. The canal feeds its economy, bringing in 40% of the country's income. If operations there start to fail, the whole nation will crumble, and U.S. interests along with it. That's why Washington frowns at the idea of the road, thinking in geopolitical terms. But even if the Panama Canal and Panama itself remain safe, the U.S. would still stand to lose. Too much could start flowing in from South America. Everyone knows how the U.S. struggles with migrants crossing the southern border. A road through the Darien Gap would be like opening another door, one much harder to guard. The human flow would grow stronger, and it would get harder to tell who's coming and why. Not only the number of people would rise, drug traffic would too. Colombia today is a factory of illegal substances. Nearly 2/3 of all coca grows there. Right now, the Darien Gap still serves as a living barrier. Smugglers have to cross the jungle, losing time, money, and people. But once there's a road, the logic of the game collapses. No more fighting nature, hiding backpacks, or bargaining with boatmen. A direct land corridor would appear, from Colombia's coca fields to the Mexican border. From there, it's simple. Supply chains from Mexico to the U.S. have long been in place. American security agencies know this perfectly well. As long as illegal goods travel by sea or air, there's a chance to intercept shipments, track planes or boats, but if there's a highway, control becomes an illusion. The flow would be faster, safer, and larger than ever before. The highway meant to unite the continent will turn into a smuggling conveyor belt, and along with it, a full-blown epidemic will find its way from South America to the United States. A forgotten disease. Foot and mouth disease is a viral infection that affects cattle, pigs, sheep, and wild cloven-hoofed animals. It spreads through breath, saliva, manure, shoes, wind, and vehicle tires. The disease doesn't kill all infected animals, but makes them useless to the farm. They stop eating, lose weight, stop giving milk, and start limping. The virus is resilient. It can survive for weeks in soil and on fur. It poses no danger to humans. However, the real problem is that humans act as carriers. Anyone can pick it up from, say, a cow and then bring it somewhere else where other livestock live. Then the infection spreads quickly, and farms suffer huge losses. In North and Central America, foot and mouth disease was systematically eradicated. After the last outbreak in 1929, the U.S. and Mexico wiped the virus out completely through mass vaccination, culling of infected herds, sanitary cordons, and bans on importing live animals. Since then, the continent from Canada to Panama has been considered disease-free. Further south in Colombia, Venezuela, Bolivia, and Paraguay, the virus remains. Outbreaks occur every year. Animals are still vaccinated there, but the virus doesn't go away. The territories are too vast, the control too weak, and farms too unevenly isolated. Between Panama and Colombia lies the last natural barrier, the Darien Gap. 60 miles of impassable swamps and jungle, a biological shield. There's no road, no cargo traffic, no livestock that could cross from south to north. If a highway ever appears, that shield will vanish. Along with the flow of goods will come animals, meat, feed, and mud, where the virus can live for weeks. Just one infected calf, one uncleaned truck, and the disease could reach Central America. From there to Texas, it's less than a week's drive by truck, and then foot and mouth would have all the space it needs to spread. Roughly 90 million head of cattle, hundreds of thousands of farms, tens of billions of dollars in exports. American beef goes to Japan, South Korea, Mexico, and China. The country holds its FMD-free without vaccination status. That's key for access to global markets. Losing that status would mean instant export bans, quarantines, mass culling, and huge compensations. According to USD estimates, even a local outbreak would cost billions. At this point, it seems even farmers might turn against the highway project. And then there are the environmentalists and local people of the Darien Gap who will be the first to raise their voices in protest.